Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness. I am your host, Melissa Oatman from melissaoatman.com. I am super excited today because we have a very special guest with us. We have Nathanael Garrett Novosel. He's an author. He wrote the book, The X Factor, which is a new book that's just been out that's on the Amazon bestseller list, and also the meaning of life. And today he is going to be talking to us about the factors that define someone's sense of purpose. And sense of purpose can mean a lot of things. So we're going to dive into that and see exactly what that means. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, Nathaniel.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, so this topic is a very interesting topic, and also I think probably one that maybe some people might have a little confusion over. So I know you were going to get into explaining what the meaning of life actually means, but before you get down to the nitty-gritty, telling us those 8 factors and what it really means, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to what you're doing right now?
Sure. So the journey started when I was 5. I know that's kind of young, but my father disappeared in the middle of the night when I was 5. Now, I don't remember what that was like because that's when your memories are starting to form. But I do know when I was 6, a year later, my dad reached out 6 months after he disappeared and said, "Hey, I'm now living in California," and we went out there for 3 weeks and 2 days. And when I came back from that trip, I mean, I cried when I left because I'd never been away from my mother before. But when I came back from my father, it was like someone ripped my heart out of my chest. Like I felt empty and miserable and just like everything was terrible. And I cried myself to sleep. And I just remember sitting there staring at the ceiling, just bawling my eyes out, going, "What is the point of all this? We're going to suffer like this. This is terrible."
Yeah.
And the back of my mind triggered, like a lot of people do when they're in their worst moments. But back of my mind was unique. The back of my mind is kind of robotic in nature, and so it was like, "That's a fascinating question. I wonder if you could answer that." And I'm like crying. It's like, "What's wrong with you?" But I it was that moment that I was like, I bet you can answer that. I'd like to try. So I spent decades studying everything under the sun: philosophy, psychology, human behavior, economics and business, and religions and spirituality, and all these different things, trying to figure out, okay, what is the point? And everyone had their own answers and all these other things. But it didn't occur to me, but about 20 years later, I was changing jobs, and I was going to say, what wisdom would I would impart on someone from all these decades of what I've learned about all of this. And all of a sudden, these like concepts started popping up into my head and saying, well, you need to have desire, you need to have belief, and you have to have those two things to achieve your goals. And I started going, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is a set of universal factors that go into. And originally it was like I was kind of going for success, but then I was like, well, what's the point of it all? What's success? And I was like, oh, it's growth. It's you're supposed to grow and improve. And I was like, oh my God, like the meaning of life. And it's like it's all popped into my head over time. And I was like, this is amazing. I should write this down. So I spent 7 years writing the book. And then I just finished, I published it last year. And yeah, it was a pretty amazing journey, but I did find an answer, and one that's based on science and also underlies all religion and philosophy. So yeah, I'm gutsy enough to say I do know the meaning of life. Strange, but true.
That's funny. Yeah, because not a lot of people can say that.
Mhm.
So, you were going to talk to us about the factors that drive someone's sense of purpose, but I think we need to go back and first explain, what does sense of purpose mean? Like, what is life purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's the foundation of everything, because a lot of people, when they say meaning of life, they have a bunch of different definitions, and people use different definitions when they say that. So the ones that we're not going to use today are the goal of life, because goals are subjective. You pick something you want to attain, and you go and attain it, and then you pick another goal. There is no ultimate goal. Everybody's like, well, what, that's what I mean. It's like, okay, well, there's this video game Civilization that I loved when I was a kid, and now they have the like number 6 out or something now. But the goal of that game was to build a spaceship and fly to Alpha Centauri, and then start a new civilization there, and our colony, or whatever you want to call it. And then the credits roll, And I just to show you why there is no ultimate goal in life, let's say that was it. Let's say, hey, we're going to build spaceships, we're going to go to Alpha Centauri, then we're going to land there, and then we're going to settle there. And the first thing someone's going to ask is, and then what? And that's a good question, because there is no ultimate goal. So that's out. The other one is, what's the cause of life? It could be, God, it could be Big Bang, it could be a bunch of different things. I don't know. You can't scientifically prove it. So I leave that out. So it really comes down, there are three definitions that are scientifically provable and that you can use to, to understand it. There's the definition of life, the purpose of life, and what makes life significant. Now, the definition of life, you can go look it up. The capacity to grow is literally in the definition of life. You cannot define life without using the word growth. And then the second one, purpose. All living organisms, we all know from Darwin that they, survival of the fittest. The ones that don't die carry on. But why do they carry on? They carry on to grow. They reproduce, right? You were born, you grow, you reproduce, then you die, and then your next generation continues to grow, and so on and so forth, perpetually, or in perpetuity. And then third and finally is the significance. What we mean by that is, what do people deem to be significant? And basically, it's all growth based. If you win an award, it's because you push that field or industry or whatever forward, or art form forward, right? You changed the game. You made it completely different. I always joke, if you win an Academy Award, like, the person wins the Academy Award, the movie doesn't win the like, it's not like you hand it to the DVD copy of it and say, well, there you go, congratulations. The people who made the film go up to the front and they win the award. Why? Because they grew, they went on the journey to create something that no one has ever seen before, some amazing thing. So growth satisfies those three definitions, and therefore growth is the meaning of life. Now, the question is that all? And the answer is no. That's why you need the other 7 factors, but I'll pause there. So we got our definition straight there.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. I definitely think that life is all about growth, and that that should be a constant thing as you go through life, is the growing. So, okay, we've got the definition down. So what comes next?
So growth is the first of the 8 factors in the sense of purpose. If you are growing in something that's meaningful to you, generally you'll find your life to be significant. However, notice I have to qualify it by something meaningful to you, because you could just like sit there and curl your finger 100 times, and then tomorrow you can do it 101 times and go, oh, look, I grew, and you don't care, because that's such a trivial thing to you or to most people. Although I guess if you're recovering from something, that would be a phenomenal thing. So it's, it's all relative. But there are 7 other factors that help figure out how to grow in a way that feels meaningful. So the meaning of life is growth. That's factor 1. And we can go through these in detail, but let me just summarize them. Factor 2 is experience. Experience is the medium through which all growth occurs. You have to have experience in order to grow. The third factor is desire. Desire is what drives you, motivates you, directs you to which direction you want to go in terms of growth, and helps you figure out which experiences you need to, or what experiences you want to have to grow in where you want to grow. So, if you want to play football, you gotta go practice, right? So, okay, I want to go and practice my throw. Fourth is belief. So belief is what sustains you toward your goal through adversity. You have to believe you could do it, or you won't. In fact, the lack of belief will squelch your desire, no matter how strong. Fifth is emotions. Emotions are a feedback mechanism telling you how your desires, beliefs, and experiences are aligned. If you want something and believe you can have it, and then you have the experience for having it, you feel wonderful. If you want something but you don't believe you can have it, you feel miserable. So that's how emotions are providing feedback. The sixth is ethics. Ethics are the means through which you achieve goals and achieve your growth without hurting other people. Now that's part of 2 factors that go in. You can call it cooperation if you'd like, but 6 is ethics, and that means don't hurt people, basically, and do things that are going to optimize your growth. And then support, which is number 7, is work with other people to grow more than you would by yourself. Imagine the pyramids or a self-driving car. Imagine trying to do that yourself. It would take you eons. So you need more than one person, more than one people, more growth. And then finally is choice. And it's a great way to end the book. But basically, ultimately, you decide how your life moves forward. Yes, there are things outside your control, like your genetics. However, there are things outside your control, there are things inside your control. And basically, your actions are what you can, under what things you can control, determine your destiny. And that's that. I mean, yeah, maybe your parents did this, or that something did that, or maybe you got struck by lightning. Anything could have happened, but the only thing you control is what you can control, and that's your choice that you make every day on what you choose to focus on, what you choose to do. And so who cares what the, the uncontrollable factors are, because by definition you can't control them. Focus on the choices you can make and make good ones. Don't use the uncontrollable stuff as an excuse to make bad decisions, which a lot of people do.
Yeah, I see that a lot. That makes total sense. That a lot of people, um, well, I think a lot of people use that uncontrollable stuff as an excuse to not learn, not grow, because it's easier to stay in the victim mindset and mentality. And so I can totally see how this is all starting to come together to
Mhm.
help someone figure out what their sense of purpose actually would be. So let's
Yep.
go back and break that down now, through each step, if we could, a little bit
Sure.
more, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So you have the first step, which is growth.
Mhm.
And I saw something on your website too. You had a checklist
Mhm.
where you kind of help people. To me, as I was looking through it, I was like, oh, this is kind of showing people like, am I really learning and growing through situations, or do I stay stagnant and I just kind of let life happen to me?
Mhm. Yeah, it's an assessment. One reason for the assessment is I actually put it before and after the book, so the assessments are in there. And I did it because I wanted to have some sort of scientific proof that the book actually led to better outcomes. So I even put it on the site. You can take the assessment before you read the book and after you read the book, and then rate yourself. And hopefully it goes up, because that's the whole point.
I love that
But
though. I love kind of the self-assessment on that too. I think that's a great piece to it.
Yeah, but basically what that assessment does is it tests things. It just asks you basic questions like, I believe that my life tomorrow will be better than it is today. I mean, metaphorically, not literally tomorrow versus today, but in the
Right.
future than it is now. And that's one of the examples that that's your level of testing, your level of optimism. It's testing your belief in future. A future that's better off, that you believe in your own personal growth, and that your ability to improve your life. And so there are a bunch of questions like that. Like I feel strong desire for the things. It's basically testing those 8 things, but not directly. It asks questions that get at it. So it's not. I mean, you can obviously. I'm not doing this as a psychological study, so I'm not trying to like eliminate all effects, external externalities, but for yourself, just to make sure you're answering honestly, and know where you want to improve. And what's great is that each of those questions, I even write after the assessment, says, go to this chapter if you have some issues with this, like if you don't have
I
the
was going
belief
to
that you
ask
can
you
attain
that.
your goals.
I was
Yeah.
just going to ask you that. So you walk through these 8 factors, and then through this assessment, if there are areas where people know, like, oh, I really have a weakness here, like I don't believe in myself very much, or
Mm-hmm.
um, I I don't know what I want to do. The desire portion is really low for me. So you then take them to that chapter where you, and in the book, do you teach them how to um, improve those
Yep.
areas that maybe they consider to be weaknesses?
Yes, absolutely. Because I'll give you a couple examples. Desire is one. Like, one of the things. Oh, I don't really feel like I want anything in life.
Yeah.
And there are 2 little tricks that I have in the book. One is, if you don't know what you want, then you still have a desire. You want to know what you want. Ta-da! There you go. You have a desire. So there you go. So you're not without desire. No one. There's no one who wants nothing. That a lot of people. There's a lot of Eastern philosophy that talks about how, like, to eliminate all desires, like some virtue or something like that. And I'm not a big fan of that. But their point is, you want to get rid of desire that's causing you pain by wanting something you can't have, kind of thing. And I get that, and there's benefits to that, that I even talk about in the book. But in terms of having no desire, that's impossible. You're gonna want to have a sandwich or whatever at some point, or else you're gonna
Right.
die. So I talk about how you want to know what you want, and then I also have a little bit of a trick of just like, just do things, like try things, experiment with new things, and see what triggers your desire to do more of it. And that's the problem. A lot of people say they don't know what they want, and it's like then they sit there paralyzed, and it's like, well, maybe you got to go find out what you want. You can't just sit around and hope it comes to you in a dream or something. So there are a couple of ways to do that. The belief is another good one, where desire, belief exists on a continuum. So there could be the higher the goal, the more you want it, the less you believe it. The lower the goal, the more you believe it, the less you want it. So it's like, I can go get something out of my fridge now. I believe I could do that because I could literally walk over there right now. Do I want to do that? Well, yeah, when I'm hungry, but it's not like, I'm not dreaming every moment. I can't wait till I go open my fridge. Like, no, it's more something like, oh, I can't wait till I win a race, or I can't wait till I do this or that. So your goal is to constantly find ways to increase your desire without decreasing your belief too much. So a lot of people do that. I'm sure you've heard a ton of self-help examples, like people say set milestones and things to keep you motivated. Because if you set your goal too high and then fail on the way, or go, oh, it's so far and I messed up, I'm going to give up. But if you have milestones, when you have adversity, go, well, I just need to make it 2 more feet and I'll get to that milestone, no problem. So it's just ways that makes your journey more believable. But other times people tell you to dream big. Why? Because they want you to have such a huge goal that it just, the desire for it encompasses your whole being, and you are so motivated to go do it that nothing will stop you. And those are all tricks of the trade to work on that desire belief balance.
I can definitely see the parallel between those two things. What do you think is probably the biggest one that people struggle with? Is it the belief system?
Oh man. Well, if you want to go as a proxy for how long the chapter is, ethics is the longest chapter.
Is it?
Uh, I apologize to everyone in advance when they go to read it, because it's 80 pages long. And I said I could cut it down, and I can cut it in half. But if I do, it's not going to give you the whole story of how to think about ethics. So I made the call and said, you know what? You don't want it. You see, skip the chapter. No one's putting a gun in your head to read it. But I think ethics are the hardest, especially today, because what people have this huge mistake about ethics. Well, they have a few mistakes about ethics, but the biggest one today is they think that, like, here's the ethical standard we hold today, and therefore everybody before you was a monster. And it's like, that's not how it works. Ethics evolve. Ethics are not these universal things that, like, everybody should just intuitively understand, and if they did, then they would all live perfectly, and everyone who doesn't follow that standard that you've said is a monster. That is completely not true. And I give an example to really prove, because it's very important to me in the book. I actually have a section of each chapter that talks about what would happen if you didn't have this thing. So, like, for example, there are sociopaths who don't have emotions, so it's like, I talk about the exceptions of people who don't have these things, and how it affects their ability to find meaning in their lives and things like that. So I'm a big fan of trying to disprove stuff, or fail to disprove stuff, to be exact. And so, when you're talking about ethics, and they say, oh, there's always existed. Imagine, is it wrong to make your kids go into the same field as you, the same job or career? Now, you would, or anyone today, I'm not picking on you, would probably say, well, yeah, that's probably wrong, because people should find their own paths. Like, okay, that's fair. But imagine you're in, like, I don't know, 1400s, 1200s, go however far back you want to go. Now imagine you're a small business, which is almost impossible in these societies that are, these monarchies and things, and they're oppressing everybody and so forth. And you have a small business, let's say you're a blacksmith or something, and, like, you've got 8 kids, 10 kids, and so you've got the oldest son, let's just say, and that person's being raised in the father's footsteps in this example of the blacksmith. And that son goes, oh, actually, I want to go dance. Like, is it ethical for that kid to abandon the family to go do whatever he wants when there are 10 kids, and it's so hard to have a business, and that business is going to go under, and everyone's going to die and starve? No, It's not ethical to do that. You suck it up and you do what's right for your family.
Right.
So like ethics change, they change over time. And then the situations change. So it's hard to look back and everyone's like judging everybody. We live in a world today where everyone wants to judge everybody else for not living up to these ideals. And it's like, look, ethics change, things change. A lot of people think that like imprisonment and things like that is terrible, but imagine if you go back to 1,000 years ago and you fight a war and you have a lot of prisoners of war, and you keep them, and then, well, you got to feed them. You don't want them to just starve to death. Maybe have that ethic, but then you can't afford to feed them because you have a small group. So what do? You put them to work against their will.
Yeah.
That is the best thing to do in that situation. But now we live in a society of abundance where you don't have to force these people who are in prison to work. And so they just sit there and you just keep them away from society and you feed them and you clothe them and do all that other stuff, but you don't force them to work. So was it always wrong for them to be forced to work? I'd say, obviously, if you go back 1,000 years, that was the most ethical thing to do so that they don't die, so you don't kill them, and so that you don't starve anyone else who was innocent, feeding the people who did wrong. So like ethics change, and people really struggle with that because they might find their own ethics, and I try to help them with the chapter, but then it just becomes hard because once you've established your own ethics, you then seem to want to impart your ethics on everyone else and then force everyone to follow them, and that's not necessarily and judge everybody for not following your standard, and that's a tough one.
Yeah, that is definitely a tough one. And I think a lot of people have the fallacy that we all think exactly alike, and
Mm-hmm.
that's not true. But most people want to think that, everyone else thinks just like them.
Yeah.
But then I think we see, especially in today's society, we're seeing that that's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
A lot of people are disagreeing and a lot of conflict going on. So it's just proof that, again, everyone's ethics are different.
Yeah.
So what some people deem to be fair and right and just, others do not. So that is a
Yeah.
very good point. So I see why your chapter was 80 pages long on
Yeah,
ethics.
yeah. I talk about positive ethics and negative ethics, and where the line is that, and I even talk about what ethics are biological. There are 3 ethics that are biological, and this is fun. I don't give anyone a set of ethics. It's one of my rules, one of my ethics, if you will, for writing my book, is that everybody seems to have their own set of ethics they want to impart on anyone else. Like I just said, I didn't want to do that. I said, look, you figure out your own ethics. You just know you got to have them. And I give my favorite example is I mentioned the significance definition of meaning. And but the example I give is who belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame in the steroid era. And that's just one of the best examples because some people say that the people who did steroids do belong in there. Other people say they don't. And here's why. This is proof of the significance definition of meaning growth, and how ethics can detract from that. Basically the people who say they belong in there, you say, well, it was fair because everybody was doing it. That's a rationalization saying that doing the steroids was ethical, or at least not unethical, I should say.
Yeah.
And then there are people who say, no, they don't belong because there are people who weren't doing the steroids and they did well and they deserve to be in the hall. But the people who did do steroids cheated, unfair, unethical achievement of the goal. And so therefore their achievements don't count. They're not significant. They don't mean what they mean. Get it? See where it's going there? So the ethics can take away the meaning of something because you don't believe it was attained fairly or rightfully. And so the biological 3 that are there, but otherwise I don't touch what ethics you should hold, are fairness, reciprocity, and minimal harm to things you care about. Those are the 3 ethics that are biological. Because if you don't have those, then humanity can't exist as a social species. Because if you can't trust another person, then you can't, let them in and cooperate with them. And if you're not fair, if you don't reciprocate, and if you don't not harm them,
Yeah.
then so did I say that wrong? If you don't, I did, that was a double negative. If you don't, if you don't, okay. If you don't do those things, then you'll then they can't trust you, so you can't cooperate. So those are the 3 that are biological in nature and necessary for humanity and society. But I don't judge otherwise and say, well, thou shalt not do this or that.
Yeah, I like that because you're so right in that everyone has to come up with their own sense of ethics. What for you is probably the most interesting factor of helping to define your sense of purpose?
Yeah. I mean, probably the most interesting one is emotions for three reasons. One, it's a hugely contrarian statement to say happiness is not the meaning of life, but I do in there, and I explain why. Second is I have a formula for emotions that I've never seen before. That I guess that means I invented it. I don't know, but it's flawless. Like there's no exception to it about why you feel what you feel. And it helps you to figure out things. And then third, in terms of it's how to get your sense of purpose, you have to try things and then feel whether they're right for you. And so that's one of the it's the best mechanism to tell if you're on the right track. Because that's what the point of emotions is. That's probably the most interesting one. So let me give you an example of those three things. So happiness is not the meaning of life. I can say that definitively. The more accurate statement is do what makes you happy. A lot of people say the meaning of life is to do what makes you happy. That's accurate. People say the meaning of life is to be happy is actually false. And there's a bunch of ways to disprove that. The number one is they've actually managed to hook up to a human being's pleasure sensor of the brain, what do you call those things? Electrodes. Electrode where they can trigger your pleasure sensor forever. And you will just sit there and feel total bliss until you die of starvation or thirst or whatever it is that you're not doing because you're just sitting there feeling great.
Yeah.
So you can feel great for the rest of your short life if you wanted to. That's not the point. If it was, then that's what everyone would be doing.
Right.
It's not the point. Obviously, you're just to sit there and you're not just sit there pleasure. You're sitting there just feeling good and doing nothing. That's ridiculous. So happiness is not in and of itself the point. But the other reason, more importantly, is here's why it's not the point. It can be logically derived as well, other than just disproved. And let me ask you a question. What is the point of going to school?
Um, to learn and gain knowledge, which also helps you to grow.
Exactly. So why did you not say to get an A?
Because A doesn't really hold much value. I mean, it's to me, there were classes where I got A's and I didn't learn anything.
Exactly. So A's are supposed to be an indicator that you've learned, but it's not the point. Although people make it the point once it becomes a thing. And that's what happiness is. So emotions are an indicator of feedback of your degree and direction and velocity of growth or harm. So fear is, oh, I'm worried about being harmed. Excitement is, I'm looking forward to something great. Pain is, I'm being hurt. Happiness or love or whatever is, I'm feeling my true growth self. And so that it's a feedback mechanism, but it's not the point. And you can tell from that school analogy, you totally get it. You can hack your emotions, like I just said. You can also do drugs and all kind of other things to make yourself quote unquote happy, but it
Right.
doesn't necessarily, just like you can cheat to get an A. It doesn't mean you actually learn anything. And
Right.
so learning is the point. The A is not the point, but it becomes the point when you start to measure it. Same thing. Growth is the point. Happiness is an indicator that you're growing and thriving. You can then hack it and you can cheat, and it's not the point. And that's not the point. That doesn't make it the point. And so I love that. But the other thing is, then I'll pause, is the formula I mentioned. So the formula for emotions, it's a formula. It's works every time. There's no exception to it. Emotions are a combination of three things, and you'll see it's the other three of the other factors. Desire plus belief plus experience. That can explain every emotion you've ever had in your entire life. And you could have combinations of those things creating conflicting emotions. But just to give an example, so let's take jealousy. Jealousy, you want a thing or person. You believe that you deserve that thing or person. You believe, more importantly, that some other person does not deserve that thing or person. And then you see the experience, you see the person with that thing or person that you want and you don't have, and you're really, really jealous because you want that thing or person. And here's the proof how your emotions change, which is if you change any parts of that formula. First of all, if you didn't want the thing, you wouldn't be jealous because you wouldn't care. If you weren't looking at that person, you wouldn't feel as jealous because you wouldn't be hitting you in the face. And then most importantly, the belief, if you actually believe that that person deserved it, you would not be feeling jealousy. You'd be feeling admiration. Admiration is the same thing as jealousy, with that one belief change, that you are happy for that person because you know that that person deserves it. And you hope one day that you could grow into the person that can have that person or thing too. And that's what emotions are telling you. They're giving you that feedback. And to be able to use that formula, I mean, people always said I was in touch with my emotions, and I was like, yeah, this is easy. I know why I'm feel everything. And so whenever I wrote it down, I'm like, oh my God, anyone who has trouble with their emotions, just fill out the equation. It's literally an algebra equation that you can just plug in for X. What do I want? Well, plug in for X. So what do I believe? Plug in for X. You can just put in a variable there, and then just figure out what you're feeling, or how what you're feeling is telling you what you want, believe, or are experiencing.
I like that. And I really think that's going to help people who are more, I think, like maybe logical brained and math oriented. I was never one of those people, but I love the little formula because I think that that's super helpful. I think a lot of people um, will be triggered and have emotions and not really know why they're coming up and what it's really all about. So that would be a very helpful formula for trying to figure that out. Like, why am I feeling this way? What is causing this? And then that leads to, well, what is it that I really want? So I
Yeah.
think that helps with that too, in guiding you in that direction.
Yeah, and so why it's the most interesting to me is that growth is by definition constantly changing. So you don't have one meeting in life. That's another misnomer, kind of with the one final goal. Like, oh, like I always use the example of because he just retired, uh, 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 oh god, Peyton Manning, Peyton Manning, and say Peyton Manning, one of the best quarterbacks to ever live, was the best, and now I guess getting surpassed by Tom Brady, but uh, 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 he's done with his career. So should he just go and crawl in a hole and die now because he achieved his
Yeah.
meaning in life, which was to be a great quarterback? Of course not. He goes. He's a great pitch man. He's a businessman. He's helping others. He's volunteering. He's doing the ESPN show. He's commentating. He's helping other people. He's fostering the growth of people's love for football. Like, he has more in life than just being one of the greatest football players of all time. So it's silly to think that, like, oh, that's it and I'm found it and I'm going to do that forever. I mean, you're always going to grow physically until you die, but you're going to stop growing in height at some point, because that's what people do. And so, like, you change your growth trajectories. So the reason why I love emotions as my most interesting one is you need to keep listening, because the reason why you shouldn't, why the meaning of life is not to be happy, is because boredom is good. Boredom signals to you, I'm not growing. What I'm doing right now is not engaging me. Therefore, I need to change my behavior to find something that does. If you did not have that feeling, then you would be sitting around wasting your life and you wouldn't know anything, whether it was doing anything or not. So emotions are amazing things. Yes, even the bad ones. Yeah, like you're annoyed or you're angry or whatever. Yeah, something is stopping you in your way of achieving your goals, of growing in the way that you want. So you have to find a way around it, or through it, or whatever, pick your metaphor there. And so, like, it's a great thing to have, and it's the signal that's always telling you whether you find something you find is meaningful. That's why my book, the biggest thing is, I can't tell you what your meaning in life is. I list a bunch of growth areas and tell you to pick which ones you like and determine where you want to be in those areas. But only your own emotional guidance system, if you will, to steal a phrase from the law of attraction folks. Your emotional guidance system is the only thing going to tell you whether you're doing something meaningful to you or not.
Yeah. And now, if someone were to purchase your book, and this is the book, The Meaning of Life, that you take them through each of these steps, so they, in your chapters, will read about what each of these 8 factors are, and then you give them examples of them, and then how they can grow in those particular factors. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, you do the pre-assessment. I define what I mean by meaning and get rid of the ones that you can't answer, like whether there's a God or what the ultimate goal is. Then I define it in the ways I said it. Then I say, here are the 8 factors, the 8, that I take you through each one. And I go through, I have the same structure. I'm a little nuts in that regard. Everything, the exact same structure. It's the definition of that term, how it applies to all living organisms. You're welcome to skip that chapter if you don't care, or not chapter, that section if you don't care. Then I talk about how it applies to humans. Then I talk about how it applies to you. Then I talk about what happens if you didn't have that thing, how it would not allow you to have your sense of purpose as well. And then I talk about what to do if you're unsure. And that's that. So if you want to jump to the last one, that's fine. The section of each chapter. And then I end it with questions and exercises to take to actually help you flesh out that concept for you. So at the end of the book, you should have each of those 8 concepts pretty well understood, and then you would have applied them by asking yourself those questions and understanding those things as they apply to you.
I love that. I always love guided learning. I'm a teacher also myself. So I love how you do the pre-assessment so people have an idea of kind of where they are in the beginning, and then they can see how they've grown after going through each of those different lessons that you give them. So I think that's amazing. And definitely you should check that out. That sounds really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. And then, as you mentioned, the other book I have, it just came out a couple of weeks ago, The X Factor. It's called The X Factor, The Spiritual Secrets of Successful Executives and Entrepreneurs, if I could get that subtitle right. And I wrote one chapter in it. It's a multi-author book. And my chapters in that book is actually just kind of a breakdown in more detail of how I ended the book, the Meaning of Life book. Because the Meaning of Life book, I did a fun cop out at the end that said, in conclusion, if you want to have more meaning in your life, one word: care. And it's a trick. If you get where the trick is, care is literally the definition of caring is to assign meaning or significance to something,
Yeah.
and therefore you care. Therefore you want to, that you value it, you care about it, you do something to foster its growth or keep it
Very clever, very
intact.
clever.
So it's cheating, but that's why I don't write the whole book about that. But I just end with it and say, just remember, care. If you're caring about it, you give it meaning. Therefore, it matters to you. Therefore, you're finding it meaningful. But I write a chapter in that book because it's for executives and entrepreneurs. I've advised executives for almost 18 years now, and throughout my career, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I ended up finding out I was actually in the job I really was meant for. So I was like, oh, that's weird. But I actually talked about there are 2 ways to get to care more about what you do. One is to find more ways to care about what you're already doing. And the second is to figure out what you quote unquote really want to do or want to do in the future, and find ways to do more of what you like, or getting you closer to the thing you care about, and getting further away from stuff you don't like, or doing less of what you don't like. And so I give you practical examples of how to determine what it is you like about what you're doing, and how to find things you might want to do in the future, and use those 2 things to care more about your job.
I love that. I think a lot of people would find that very useful. So, if anyone wants to buy your books, or they want to follow you, or perhaps, work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So the 2 books are on Amazon, so you're welcome to check them out there. You can search for them. Social media, at Life the Book is most of my social media. Couldn't get that for all of them platforms, but most of them. And then, my website is yourmeaninginlife.com. And I have a blog there. I write about once a week or so. It's like second or third to Mark Manson. And then I have a bunch of freebies on there and stuff and things like that. I'm not in the business of trying to do these super duper seminars or anything like that right now. It's just like, hey, the book is cool, take the pre-assessment and read the book, take the pre and post assessment, read the blog. Anything I can do to help, that's why I do these podcasts. I'm happy to do.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for, doing all of that. And we're going to have all of the links in the show notes too, so people can go right there and click on it to take them directly to your website and where they can purchase your books. So I highly recommend going there because the book sounds really amazing. So I always like to end the show by asking our guests to leave our listeners with one little nugget of wisdom that they can take with them for the day. So what piece of advice would you want to leave our listeners with today?
Sure. If all else fails, seek meaningful growth opportunities. That's your one beacon of light for how to find more meaning and purpose in your life. And to kind of build on that, don't get into your head. The biggest problem today, people call it crisis of meaning, is that people think like the meaning of life is to be happy and you're just supposed to experience pleasure all the time and go like watch videos and do this stuff, and then you feel unfulfilled and you wonder what's going on. Seek meaningful growth opportunities. You will find your meaning by doing that, whether it's going to a soup kitchen and helping other people with who are having tough times. That's meaningful. If it's raising your kids well, well, that's meaningful. If it's doing a job that you care about, that's meaningful. Like, do those things. Those activities lead to fulfillment, not pleasure. And that's what you're striving for. So seek meaningful growth opportunities.
Love it. Love it. Very good advice. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was so much fun talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I want to thank all of you for being here with us today as well. As always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a positive review from wherever you're listening. You can always leave some stars on iTunes. Don't forget to follow me on social media. And if you want to work with me, you can go to my website, melissaoatman.com. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day from wherever you're listening. As always, I am sending you so much love and light, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.